Hello guys, this is Legendary TV and welcome to the Vindictus 2020 Spellsword Arisha guide. This is going to be my first ever video guide, so please let me know in the comments below if I missed something or something is wrong. Constructive criticism is welcomed and greatly appreciated. Also, if you will enjoy and find this particular guide helpful, please leave a like and hit a subscribe button. It'll be really awesome. Thank you. Also, on a very quick side note, I would like to address the current bad situation in the world regarding the virus. I just want to wish you and your loved ones to stay healthy, and if you unfortunately experienced the virus, I wish you a speedy recovery and hang in there. So today, we're going to talk about Spellsword Arisha. Tons of damage, extreme ability, and huge defense kit, which altogether mixes to an amazing powerful class. How we're gonna go through this guide. 1. Option settings. 2. Combos. 3. How to gain mana, mana bar, what is stored mana, and true mana. 4. Active skills. 5. Dodges and blocks. 6. Skill ranking priorities, which includes common skills and spellsword skills. 7. Mobility. 8. Stamina management. 9. Artifacts. 10. Skill awakenings. 11. I'm going to give you some basic and advanced tips for Spellsword. 12. Future rebalance updates on the Spellsword. What's going to happen with the Spellsword later in the updates. And then we're going to roll to some conclusion at the end of the guide. So let's get started. So first things first, let's go to the options. Controls, advanced settings. Here you will see camera and controls, and you would want to untick everything over here. Specifically, you would want to untick press attack plus smash to grab, and attack where camera faces. Now, what will these things do? First option will allow you to use your diffusion warp without letting go of your left click during arcane flurry. And the second one will make your life way easier and you'll stay in more control of your character. So I highly suggest to untick everything here, and it's just gonna be some quality of life changes for you. So let's talk about the combos now. So Spellsword Arisha has two modes. Normal mode, in which we're right now, and then the Mana Blade mode, in which you can switch by pressing the tab button. Ideally, you would want to stay in Mana Blade mode all raids, all battle. But if you happen to run out of mana, you'll be forced to switch to the normal mode, so you can stack up some mana. Let's go through the Mana Blade mode first. Right-click to deploy your focus, and then left-click to start doing Arcane Flurry. Just right-click again, you get the debuff that lasts 9 seconds. And every time you attack with Arcane Flurry, which is left-click, you just hold the left-click, the cooldown decreases by 1 second. Whenever the cooldown is off, you press the right-click again, you warp, deal damage. And that's about it. That's all you need to know in the Mana Blade. So if you run out of mana, you'll be forced to go to the normal mode. It will just keep telling you not enough MP, not enough MP. With tab, go to the normal mode, and right click, deploy the crystal, it's blue. We do 5 attacks, it turns red, which is level 5 crystal. What then you want to do, you want to apply the mark, which is called active mana tracer. So the crystal gets the homing properties. Right click again, and it goes through the boss and deals damage. So right click, 5 attacks, right click again, deals damage, and then you can, after it deals these, it goes through the boss and deals this ticks of damage, you can explode it with a crystal burst or ether zone, depending on the situation. But going into normal mode is going to be something that you're going to be rarely doing. because the sources that Arisha can get mana from are enormous. There's a lot of ways to get the mana. So this is basically both how in Mana Blade mode and in normal mode Arisha damages. That's all her combos. That's it. Now that we talked about the combos for the normal mode and Mana Blade mode, let's switch to the mana itself, which is the essential key thing of Spellsword Arisha. It's the main source of Arisha's damage. Over here is the mana bar, the blue one. You have 500 cap of it, and you start every raid, every battle with half of it, with 250. So there are only 3 ways to spend your mana. One of them is deploying the crystal, which will cost you 8 mana, using Arcane Flurry, which is 6 mana per hit, and then the diffusion warp. So when you right click again, it will cost you 10 mana. And that's it. Only these 3. So if you play Arisha, you might notice that she has 2 different types of mana on the bar. One of them is the dark one, over here. It's called stored mana, and the light one is called true mana. So you can use true mana right away in Mana Blade mode whenever you want, with all the things that I told you at the start. And the dark one, the stored one, you can't use it until you absorb it. So in order to absorb it and make it true mana, you just press the space button once, and it converts the dark one, the stored one, into true one. So how exactly do you get mana? There are 3 ways to do so. First of all, is your active skills. Whenever you successfully land any of your active skills on the monsters, you gain stored mana. Like right here. We did the Ruin Blade, and we got some stored mana over here. This dark one. The second one would be Mana Edge, which is your normal attacks in normal mode, and your crystal. Whenever you deploy the crystal or do the normal attacks, you get the stored mana too. There is also this thing called Perfect Block, Perfect Drain. So you see this amount of mana that we have, the stored one. What you want to do once you got some stored mana, you would want to always fish for the Perfect Drain. A Perfect Drain is just a block that you do against an enemy. Make sure you block the enemy's attack. And as you can see, we got all the stored mana into true mana, and we also got like 50% of it converted on top. This is by far the easiest way to get an enormous amounts of mana, just by attacking in the normal mode and then fishing for the perfect drain. And the third option to get the mana is your SP. So whenever you have SP, you have 250, you can hold the space button and it will convert 250 SP into 100 mana. And that's pretty much it. So active skills, Mana Edge, which is normal attacking in the normal mode, and like throwing your crystal and retrieving it. Mana Swap, that converts SP into mana. And Perfect Drain. That's all the sources you get the mana from. Next up, active skills. So Arisha has a total of 7 different active skills. Let's start with the Crystal Burst first. So you deploy your crystal, and you can detonate it with a Crystal Burst with the active. Dealing damage, you deal instant damage. It gives you a little bit of stored mana, and you regenerate 100 mana right away. It's an awesome tool to finish your normal mode combos, or fit it in your Mana Blade combo. You should always use it anytime it is off cooldown, but have to keep in mind that Crystal Burst shares the cooldown with Ether Zone, the next active. So Aether Zone, the next active. Same thing, pretty much. Deploy the crystal, press the Aether Zone, and you create a pool of mana that damages enemies over time, giving you stored mana. It also regenerates 100 stamina and an additional 13 stamina per tick per enemy that are standing in that pool. It helps you a lot to deal with multiple enemies whenever you're leveling up in the dungeon. Also a great tool to regenerate stamina if the boss doesn't move much. So there is a difference between Crystal Burst and Ether Zone, situational difference. You want to use the Crystal Burst whenever the monster or the boss moves around a lot. And if they are standing still or they're having recovery animation, which is basically called sandbags when they don't do anything, you want to use Ether Zone. So ensuring that they receive full damage from the mana pool, you get all the stamina from it and all the stored mana. Third active skill is called Mana Tracer. So what it does, whenever you use it, Arisha sends a projectile towards her, and whenever it connects to the target, it leaves a mark. So whenever you use the skill again, you can teleport to the target, and then it goes on the cooldown. It's an amazing mobility and tracking tool, and you have to make sure that you always have the mana tracer on the target. It gives you iframes when you teleport, and you have to use it anytime it is off the cooldown. Fourth is Ruin Blade, and this is pretty much the bane of all the new players, and a lot of veteran players still struggling with it, mostly because of the inputs, the amount of inputs you have to put over there. So Arisha goes into a stance and then hits the target with a massive strike. That active has two follow-up attacks. If the first one is input correctly, and if the second one is input correctly, then the third one can go. Just like any other active, you would want this to be off. Use it whenever it's off cooldown. So let's go through it real quick. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be really hard to to train to get it, but eventually you will get there. I promise you. It's the same buttons you have to press all the time, and it's only 4 buttons basically. It's W, A, S, D, nothing more. They just repeat. No need to press like P or J or B, whatever. So, upon pressing the hotkey for the Rune Blade, as I said, she goes into a stance, 2-second stance. In this 2-second stance, you have to input the following: W, S, A, D, A, D, W, S to do the massive strike. Whenever you do it, you will gain true iframes, you'll be invincible, even to KOs and red attacks. You will deal tons of damage on the boss or monster, gain a lot of mana, and will have access to 2 extra follow-up attacks. So, Runeblade, WASDDWS, and then she leaves in the stance, after which you can use ASDSW for the next follow-up attack, and SW or AD, depending on the situation after that. So, whenever you fail the Ruin Blade, you don't get true iframes, you get minimum amount of mana, and the damage is it's super bad. So you would always want to make sure that you successfully land Ruin Blades on the target. It'll be hard, as I said, but you will get there. If I got there, you can get there as well. It's all about the muscle memory. So don't be discouraged. Don't be, sad or give up on the Spellsword just because you can't do the Rune Blade. Just keep on practicing it all the time, and eventually you will do it. So while you're leveling up, make sure to use Rune Blade whenever it's off the cooldown, so you can practice the attacks of it. So again, WSDADWS, and then the follow-up attack is ASDSW, and then SW. I have no SP here for the third one, unfortunately. That's my bad. So whenever you do the first strike, she leaves in the stance, and then you input ASDSW. You slash the target, as you saw, which has counter properties, and whenever you counter an attack with it, you gain more true mana and stored mana, and then you have access to the third follow-up attack, which is either SW, which is another slash, or AD, which is a counter flip, fancy flip that she does. And that's about it. It's really hard. It's really hard. But you will get there. I believe you will get there. It all just takes some practice. Let's do it again. It's going to be in 7 seconds. Let's see. It's just the inputs that people are scared of and the timing, because you don't have much time to input. Runblade, WSADADWS, ASDSW, and AD. Really hard, but you will get there. Fifth one is the counter drain, and it looks just like the follow-up attacks for the Runeblade. Basically, you use it, and you have to make sure that you counter an attack with it. So you gain 100 true mana right away, and some stored mana on top. And it also has 2 follow-up attacks, which is SW and AD, just like Runeblade does. Absolutely the same. Resonance, the 6th one. This is a funny active. I think it's the most buggy active out of them all. You go to this view whenever you press on it, and whenever you right-click, you will send a mana storm that way. It will cast for about roughly 6 seconds. If you hit the target with it, it deals a really good amount of damage and gives you a lot of stored mana. Like, a lot of it. So, there is only one problem with Resonance. Whenever you cast it, you can't move. You can't do anything. So if you get hit by any attack, any circle that are spamming somewhere, or the wind blows just close to you, it'll get cancelled. You get hit, it gets cancelled. You lose 750 SP. You lose enormous amount of stored mana that you can later use to deal DPS with Arcane Flurry and Diffusion Warps and all that. And some damage, of course. It does a lot of damage the more you gear. So Resonance takes some practice as well, which I will tell you that I will drop the link of the video that I've made not so long ago for Season 3 and Niflheim setups for the Resonance, so you guys will see in which situations you can cast safely and freely cast Resonance to benefit most of it. It's a solo, they're all solo raids, so it can be a little bit risky there, but in the party play, it's going to be 100% sure, 100% safe, 100% legit. So you will land your resonances with quite ease if you just follow the video. And the last active is Temporal Shift. There's not much to talk about it, to be honest. It's just a hold move. I believe it's the best hold move in the game. It looks really cool. So Arisha just freezes the time and freezing and stunning the boss, allowing your teammates to do free damage. And at the end of the cast, she deals some damage to the boss, and you gain some stored mana from it as well. It has a large cooldown, so whenever you have everything else on the cooldowns, which is Counter Drain, or Counter Drain, Resonance, Ruin Blade, Mana Swap, Crystal Burst, Tracer, you have everything. You would want to use just your hold move whenever. Moving on down the list, we have dodges and blocks. And if you think about it, if you count them all, Arisha has a whopping 11 ways of countering, blocking, dodging enemy attacks. First things first is your block, regular block, you just press space button and she blocks an attack, just like that. Easy. The second one is a space plus directional key, which is called diffusion shift, or simply dash. And you can mix these. You can diffusion shift into block, which makes you pretty much invincible to any kinds of attack, as long as you have stamina. Then, if we make some SP here real quick, the third one would be mana swap. That works just like the block. That allows you to block multiple attacks at the same time. Diffusion warp. Every time you warp, you gain iframes. So whenever the boss attacks you, you just diffusion warp. And it won't hit you. Over here, just a second. Boom. Mana Tracer, active again whenever you apply the mark. Also works as a dodge, giving you iframes. A Counter Drain, both having counter properties. That gives you mana and all that. A Ruin Blade himself. See, he hit me, but I didn't even feel a thing. And the follow-up attacks after it also give that have counter properties. And that's about it. There's also the temporal shift. Yes, it gives you like true iframes as well. Let's see. It's temporal shift, and you're completely invincible. Whatever he does, you don't care. You just don't care. So 11 ways: diffusion warp, mana tracer, teleportation, simple block, simple dash with the directional keys, counter drain with the counter properties, both of them, one, and then the follow-up attack as well. Same goes for the Ruin Blade, temporal shift, and all that. Next up would be the skill ranking priority, and we're gonna go through this real quick. I'll just gonna tell you which are the most important ones and which you can skip, not putting much AP into them while you're leveling. So first things first, Battle Respiration over here. The impact is pretty high because it gives you the restoration rate of the stamina in combat and out of the combat. So you would want to level it up for sure. You don't really need combat mastery much because you would usually be in the Mana Blade mode anyway, and it just applies to the normal attacks, only normal attacks. Next up is Stamina Mastery. The impact is quite low, I would say, because you're gonna have the buff until level 90 for the new players that are gonna give you stamina recovery. After that goes Standing Endurance, and I recommend to level it up to rank 9. So whenever you get down, when you just, you fall down, you can instantly roll back or roll forward to recover from that. Critical hit is pretty high in the priority, but it's also very expensive, so keep in mind it's going to be very, very expensive, just like all the skills that go to rank 3 priority, pretty much. Next goes Strength Mastery. I'm not sure, where is it? I think they deleted it because Arisha doesn't use Strength Mastery anymore, and yeah, it was deleted, I believe. Intel Mastery is a high priority as well because you're gonna get INT Intel. that increases your magic attack. Defense Mastery, that is debatable, questionable. As we just discussed, Arisha has 11 ways of dodging, blocking, and countering the attack. So you don't really need Defense Mastery. You don't really need to stack up defense. Just try to work with all the defense kit that you already have that Arisha has. Agility Mastery is low priority, very low. Life Flare is the same. Smash Mastery is ultra high priority because in Mana Blade mode, all your attacks are smashes. So the more Smash Mastery you have leveled up, the more damage you do with Arcane Flurry. They're like the synergy between them is huge. Willpower Mastery and Stone Skin are pretty low priority as well. Health Mastery, pretty much the same, so that's about it for the common skills. Moving on to Spellsword. So Active Crystal Burst, high priority. It has good AoE properties. It does very good damage. Also restores stamina. Mana Blade, very high priority. And you can only level it up once. So make sure it's there so you can switch to the Mana Blade mode, in which you would want to be at least 90 to 100% of the time. Next up is Mana Crystal. I would say it's a medium impact on, leveling it up. You'll have better skills to deal damage than just the focus, the crystal. Crystal is still good, especially whenever you're in normal mode. Next will be Mana Drain, which has a high priority. It increases the iframes of your block. And I believe, yes, it also benefits from the perfect block. So perfect drain, sorry, that we talked about, that gives you extra mana on top, depending on how much stored mana you did have. Next up is Mana Edge, which are your basic normal attacks with left click. Medium importance. A Diffusion Shift, high priority. Extends the amount of iframes you do with your dashing, whenever you dash. Ether Zone, pretty high, just like Crystal Burst. Same thing. A Mana Tracer, I would say low priority, putting AP on. You won't really use Mana Tracer much while leveling, so I don't really see much of use of Mana Tracer while leveling. Spellsword Mastery, of course, and Focus Mastery, of course, you would want to level them up so you unlock new weapons while you level up. You become stronger, deal more damage, have more defense from the armor, and all that. Ruin Blade, very high. And why I say very high, because whenever you go through the dungeons, there's always the end boss at the end. And if you master Ruin Blade while leveling up, and I'm pretty sure you can, you can pretty much one-shot all the bosses, the end bosses of the dungeon, with correct inputs of Ruin Blade, because it just does enormous amounts of damage. Plus, it's good for practice, of course. Arcane Flurry, very high. I'm not even going to discuss that because it increases the range of your Mana Blade, your main source of damage. Active Counter Drain, I would say medium, but it's very good to train doing the counters properly and the follow-up attacks. Working on your muscle memory there. Active Resonance, low priority. I wouldn't invest much into it at all until the later levels, of course. Diffusion Warp, which is next, is probably second after the Arcane Flurry and what was it? The Rune Blade and the Mana Blade, because it's one of your main sources of damage, the warps that you do. so invest AP into it ASAP as much as you can. Temporal Shift, low priority. You don't really use it much until the raids, the end game, level 90s. And the last thing is Mana Swap, MP Swap. Very high. Whenever you get to the level, I think it's level 50 something or 60 that you unlock it. Unlock it ASAP, so you will gain more mana from it. And that is all. That's all the skills. Our next step is mobility. Spellsword's mobility. She is pretty mobile. And let's see what she has to offer. So first things first is Mana Tracer. So you apply the mark, you go away from the boss right here, and whenever you use it again, you teleport to the boss. It's really huge, like very huge range on that. Same thing goes for the diffusion warp. So you deploy your crystal, run away from it as much as you can, and then just right click again and you teleport, swapping positions. It's really, really crazy. Now next up is going to be just dash spam, which is quite normal, nothing much about it. A modified mobility thing that you can do is dash, left click, dash, left click, dash, left click. So it kind of cancels the end of animation of the diffusion shift, allowing you to travel a little bit faster than the regular dashing. The other one would be just simple sprinting. So whenever you just run, you run faster. And one of the other things that she has is diffusion shift plus grab button. So you do the diffusion shift, space directional key, and E, and then E again. It consumes a lot of mana right away, but you travel even faster than just normal diffusion warp left click. That's all the ways, that's all the mobility that Spellsword Arisha has. It's pretty nice. Next on the list is stamina management. Unfortunately, over here, Spellsword Arisha has been known having stamina issues, and she only has two things that allows her to restore stamina, and sometimes even that not enough. One of them is Crystal Burst, active Crystal Burst. Whenever you deploy the crystal and detonate it, deals instant damage and it restores 100 stamina, and that's it. That's about it. And the second thing is active Ether Zone, which they both share the same cooldown, so you will have to figure out whenever you use the Burst or Ether Zone. Ether Zone restores 100 stamina as well upon detonation, but whenever you leave that pool of mana on the ground and the boss is standing inside of it, you also gain 13 stamina per tick per second. So 5 ticks, which is extra 65 stamina, but only if the monster stands in the pool. And that's it. She doesn't have anything else, either Crystal Burst or Ether Zone. And a lot of Arishas actually use Ether Zone, not even on the sandbags, but whenever the boss moves, so they could just squeeze in a little bit extra stamina out of it. There are also other ways, passive, common ways to get the stamina. One of them would be applying a Berserker enchant scroll on one of your accessories. Mine is on the belt. A lot of people put it on the artifact. It's, up to you. So the Berserker enchant scroll gives you a small restoration of stamina over time whenever you're in combat or out of the combat. Getting soap from the springs, right now we don't have it, but whenever you get it, you get maximum amount of stamina increased, which is better for you, so you run out of stamina way less. You can also use the Exquisite Feast in the guild house if you own one, whenever you eat there for 30 seconds, you'll get a buff for an hour and a half. That's going to restore small amounts of stamina as well. And there's little things like stamina potion for 30 minutes, and also 1 minute stamina potions that you can use uh, in the in the battle right away. And that's it. Nothing else, unfortunately. Hopefully in the future they will add something else to Arisha's kit to restore stamina, but for now that's all she has. Moving to the artifacts now, and this is going to be pretty quick. I'm just going to tell you what's the best, what's the middle one, and what's something that you wouldn't want to use much on Spellsword. So the top tier artifact for the Spellsword Arisha right now is the cat statue, and the Greater Cat statue has a cooldown of 70 seconds, and whenever you use it, you gain 250 SP, which equals 1 mana swap. So whenever you start a battle with 250 mana, you can instantly use the Mysterious Cat, get 250 SP, and convert it right away through mana swap into mana. So you start with 350 mana, which is a great head start on top of what you have. So this artifact is probably best in slot for now. I'm not sure if Paul will ever replace it, but we will see. But for now, it is the best. The second one is the Succubus Fang. This is really good for the sustain because Spellsword Arisha doesn't have self-sustain in the lengthy battles like Redeemers or Hero modes. So whenever you're learning some patterns of the boss, you would probably want to grab that as your second artifact choice, so you can learn the boss more, so you stay alive more. It is really good. And the third one is the Greater Werewolf Paw. Upon use, you gain 20% attack speed and movement speed. It doesn't really benefit Spellsword Arisha much because Spellsword Arisha doesn't need a lot of speed. I would say the perfect amount of speed when you're going to feel very, very comfortable playing Spellsword is around 80 attack speed. If you get more, the better. If you get a little bit less, like 77 or 78, you won't really feel the difference much. So try to aim to around 78, 80 plus speed. So you will feel absolutely comfortable with the Spellsword, because the Spellsword as the class, the Arcane Floor is super fast on its own. Even with 50 speed, you will see the difference. So that's about it. And now, the Skill Awakening and Awakening Priority. This is a pretty easy to explain. It's a pretty easy thing to figure out. So most of the skills have awakenings. You can awaken either increase damage on them on some of the actives or skills, or increase the knockdown rate, or reduce the SP consumption, or reduce the cooldown. So most of the skill awakenings for Spellsword, they're all focusing on the damage. So it's pretty easy. So we're gonna go with the skill name, the Waking Stone, and the impact it's gonna get. So active Crystal Burst, you go 10% damage. The impact is going to be high. Mana Crystal, damage as well, 10% damage. Medium impact. Mana Edge, 10% damage. Medium impact as well. Active Ether Zone is going to have a high priority, because you're going to use that active skill a lot, just like Active Burst, because they only have 10 seconds cooldown. Active Mana Tracer, there is only increased damage and increase the knockdown rate. Knockdown rate is pretty useless for the bosses because you can't knock them down, obviously, so you would go for the damage. But the impact that it's going to do is going to be quite low, because Mana Tracer on its own doesn't do a lot of damage. Active Rune Blade, you would want to go with a cooldown reduction, because the knockdown rate just doesn't work, right? And there's no damage awakening for it. It's going to be a medium impact for it. I would even say high, maybe. It's debatable. Arcane Flurry, of course, 10% damage, your main ability. very high impact. Also, same goes for the diffusion warp, because Arcane Flurry and diffusion warp is like, it's your bread and butter, as I said. Main source of your damage. Like all the damage, the most damage that you do is diffusion warp plus Arcane Flurry. Then goes active counter drain and active resonance. I personally go with reducing the cooldown by 22 seconds, so you can cast them more often. It's not a big of a deal in the regular raids, because you can only cast one resonance, probably, maybe two, very very rarely. It's really good for the redeemers because they're more lengthy than the regular season 3 raids. Both of them will have medium impact on your gameplay, and the temporal shift, you would want to, you can go whatever, but then knock that. So one of the last things that we're going to talk about are going to be the tips. Some of them are basic tips, some of them are advanced tips, so let's just go through a couple of them. So you would want to start every battle whenever you have the cat statue, mana swapping right away. We already talked about it, so you gain more mana as you stay in the mana blade more. The other one would be never be afraid of failing Rune Blade or Counter Drain. You'll get there. It all takes time. Just take some time and some muscle memory to do so. One of the other tips is applying the Mana Tracer to the target. We're going to be on the cooldown right now. Just in 3 seconds I'll show you. So there are different ways to apply the mark or the active Mana Tracer. So you can either use it through the hotbar, right, like that, and then teleport whenever you want. Or you can just dash and E, and it will insta-apply the mark. So you can then teleport again. Next thing is, whenever you're in Mana Blade mode, your crystal is always red, as you can see. So it will always deal enhanced damage. So Ether Zone and Crystal Burst benefit from the crystal themselves. So whenever you're in the Mana Blade mode, they're gonna do way more damage than in normal mode. As you can see, this does like 47k damage or something like that. Same goes for the Ether Zone. Right here. Wait. Arcana, come back. Please, thank you. Yeah, it does like 9k damage, as you can see, per tick. And in normal modes, it's going to be like way less, of course. What else do we have? You would always want to keep your eyes on the short cooldowns, which is your counter drain. It's roughly 55 to a minute cooldown. Crystal Burst, Ether Zone, they're 10 seconds. Diffusion Warp, it's only 9 seconds, and roughly, if you do all these Arcane Flurry, it goes to... The time between the warps is usually around 3 to 4 seconds. No more than that. Also Mana Swap, of course. Dash block is your best defense, pretty much. If you're scared that you're gonna die, just dash and block, dash and block, dash and block. You are completely invincible, pretty much, as long as you have the stamina to spam it. Eventually you will run out, so don't overplay that part, okay? Your fifth attack, which is also happened to be a second smash, is going to trigger Full Force. Full Force is something you're going to get after you complete the Redeemer battles, any of the Redeemer battles, 100 times. Whenever the boss's HP is dropped to 7 bars, it will activate. And in order to use it, so it does a lot of damage, you have to do the second smash. So this is third, fourth, fifth. This one, the second one, as you can see. There you went. There you saw the proc of the full force. Also, the Rune Blades stage 1, as I mentioned before, has true iframes. So whenever you go and successfully do it, you will gain true iframes like this. And for 2 seconds you will be completely invincible. No one will hurt you. It will be best shown in my written guide, where there is a GIF where I just true iframe through Rune Blade, a true iframe through Dullahan's red attack, red circles at 3 bars. Also, if you somehow feel like you're failing to input WS, AD, AD, WS for the Rune Blade, if you have a mana tracer on the target, in the middle of the input, you can press the hotbar for your mana tracer and try to re-input it again. It will give you another chance. I'm gonna show you in like 50 seconds what I was talking about. Also, always try to delay your follow-up attacks on the counter drain and Rune Blade, so you make sure you get all the profits from it. So let's say I'm failing Rune Blade over here. Come on, do some sandbag stuff, please. She won't. Whatever. Okay, so I'm doing Rune Blade and I'm like, oh, I'm failing. So you can re-input it again. As you saw, it went into the animation, back into the animation. So you can try and re-input it again. So keep that in mind. It's really helpful. As you see, as you know, the capacity of mana bar is 500. But if you have 500 true mana, you can still get some extra mana on top in the form of stored mana. You won't see it, but it will be there. So all you have to do is just continue attacking in the normal mode or do some actives, and you can store additional stored mana on top of your true mana. So you will technically have more than 500. It's rarely used, but it can happen. So it's a nice plus, nice pros for that. You would want to make sure you don't use your block that absorbs the stored mana on top of your true mana if you're capped, or you'll just lose it. So pretty much the last thing that we're going to talk about is going to be the future updates that rolled out on the KR already, but haven't hit NA or EU just yet. Regarding Arisha Spellsword, so the time it takes for Mana Edge to penetrate the target enemy is now scaled with Mana Edge's skill rank. Also, the diffusion shift is going to increase the speed for the following animations after using it. Throwing and collecting the mana crystal, and deactivating mana blade mode. Diffusion warp is gonna have a little tweaks into it, using it with diffusion shift plus grab key, which is -E, will allow you to use the quick mana tracer, and the reaction of quick mana tracer activated through it is gonna be much faster. It will also increase reaction speed of the diffusion warp as well after being hit by the enemy, but it won't apply if the character is already knocked down. Mana Crystal got a little bit of a little buff, slightly increased the move speed when you're throwing or retrieving it, increase the move speed of Mana Crystal, throwing, retrieval, penetration speed. Mana Blade skill will be learned up to rank A. Increasing the skill rank will reduce the delay between activating, deactivating Mana Blade and the attacks. And just a little other things, which is active resonance damage is going to be increased by 10%, and the amount of stored mana that you're going to get from active temporal shift is going to increase from 80 to 180, which is plus 100 mana, which is really nice. And one of the best things that they did, they're going to change the full force trigger, which we just talked about in that Arcana video. It's going to be, instead of the second smash in the normal mode, it's going to be just Arcane Flurry itself. So it's going to be way easier to proc and not worry about going into the normal mode just to do these slashes, losing some damage just so you can proc the full force. And that's about it. I'm gonna add all this information whenever it will hit NA or NEU. In my written guide, the link is gonna be down below, and let's move to the conclusion. Finally, this has been a huge guide. I'm really sorry, but we will have to go through everything Spellsword Arisha has. So let's get to the conclusion. I'm gonna say a couple of things, and the end of the video of the guide is gonna be just some Dullahan solo gameplay, so you guys can see like all the information that we gathered today. We're gonna just use it all. All right, so thank you so much, guys, for watching this guide. I know it was a little bit lengthy, but all the needed information is there. The timestamps are going to be there down below. Also, down below is going to be my Discord link if you want to join, my stream channel link, the video of the resonance setups, solo redeemers for Spellsword, Balor, Nimheim, and the gameplay. And please leave comments on what guide you would want to see next. I only play Arisha, so I might be not of big of a use for the other classes, but maybe some general gameplay guides that you would want to see. But the next guide, for sure, 100% sure, is going to be covering Spell Whip Arisha and the changes that are coming for it. So thank you again. It was awesome. My first video guide. I hope you will enjoy it. And I see you in the next one. Have a great day, great night. Love you all.